A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." If you visit Jerusalem, you will for sure come to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the extraordinary church built over what is believed to have been the place of Jesus' crucifixion and burial, and thus also the place of Jesus' resurrection. When you enter the door of this unique church building, immediately to your right, steps go up to a mezzanine level, steep steps that take you up to the altar which commemorates Calvary. And beneath the altar, you can reach in and you can touch rock. It's pretty soft, malleable rock, but it is rock, and it is believed that this was the substance into which the cross was placed, on which Jesus hung and where Jesus died. The wise man builds his house on rock. Earlier this week, we celebrated the feast of Andrew, and in hearing the story of Andrew's call, of course, we also heard the story of Simon being called. Simon, who later in Matthew's Gospel, in all the Gospels, gets renamed to be Peter. Rocky, the rock. You are Peter, and on this rock will I build my church, says Jesus. And of course, Peter is not a very reliable person. He denies Jesus 3 times. Straight after his renaming, he's compared to Satan. So flaky does he seem to be. And the wise man builds his house on rock. This little teaching of Jesus about the wise man and the foolish man can, I think, be misunderstood. It's not meant to remove our humanity, because Peter was a very fallible human, but he also became an extraordinary Christian leader, sins and all. This parable, I think, is a reminder to us about commitment, about giving our all and allowing God to work with it. Jesus was crucified, apparently, on a rock. He named the Prince of the Apostles Rocky, not because he was 100% reliable, but because he had commitment, which at the end of the day triumphed over his weaknesses. When we hear about the wise man and the foolish man, the wise person and the foolish person, although I think probably in the era of Jesus, it was probably men who did the house building. But when we hear this little bit of teaching, which is very well known, and we also hear that challenge about not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's make sure that we have a commitment to Jesus, which, despite our failings, will nevertheless triumph, will nevertheless be a place where crucifixion can be acknowledged because their resurrection can be acknowledged, and use that as a base from which we can share good news with the world that so desperately needs to hear it. Amen.